Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. It's been a while just because it's been Christmas, it's been New Year's, and being home with the kids, it doesn't really give me opportunity to film. But now that the kids are back to school and everything's back to normal and it's a new year, I just want to talk to you about like my goals for this year with AudioFlow and some other projects, and then just some new features that I'm building, and just basically the importance of getting people's feedback. And launching a product is one thing, but then getting customers on it is another thing, and then getting customers' feedback off the back of the actual usage of the product is probably the most valuable part of everything. So I'll give you quick updates and I'll just talk to you about some work that I'm currently working on based off that feedback. So it's been a bit quiet over that kind of Christmas period. So with obviously everyone being off for Christmas, it's hard to have conversations. And as an entrepreneur, holiday time is the worst time for me. I think when it comes to like Christmas, summer holidays, all that type of stuff, even though I get time off and go spend time with the family and the kids, the business world actually slows down quite a lot. And when you're trying to like really push your business and you're trying to have conversations and you're trying to do everything over LinkedIn and trying to get awareness, and then you realize that there's not that much engagement happening, nobody's getting back to you because of the fact of holidays. But the people who are in and do work during that period of time, they're the people you can potentially catch. So I actually caught two people in businesses who had conversations with me. I gave them a demo of AudioFlow. People I knew in the past, but had interest in AudioFlow and the actual product itself. So that's good, just to kind of get some demos and feedback from them. And then hopefully, you never know, one day they could turn into customers. So just to kind of talk about the goals of AudioFlow and my kind of like vision for 2026 for this. I did put a LinkedIn post about this yesterday, and I'll quickly just show you that actually, just because I think it's good to kind of materialize and write down and kind of make it public, because then you have some accountability to what you're actually trying to do. So this was the post that I put out yesterday, just to say like these are the goals that I actually have. And these are for both businesses, but I'm not going to touch on to Unscripted today. I'm just going to basically focus on AudioFlow. For me, my target is to onboard 30 new businesses. Now, that doesn't make a difference on the sense of what plan. Yes, I would like everybody to be on the highest plan, but realistically, I think for me, if I was to achieve 30 businesses, you have to remember I'm by myself. I don't have a team at the moment, and I'm trying to do this all based off the next year and kind of where I want to take this. If I was to kind of average around, I think 9,400 is my average customer order value, which is for like a medium-sized business, which then you might have a bit of like enterprise companies, which is like the £15,000 mark to get signed up. Roughly speaking, that could generate around about anywhere between $250,000 to $300,000, not dollars, pounds, for the year if I was to achieve that goal. Now, the way that I see this is obviously, one, I'm by myself. Secondly, how am I going to achieve that? So there's different avenues. So I'm having conversations with a couple more conferences. I'm trying to do some partnerships with businesses who have similar businesses to me, but not actually anywhere near my product. So what I mean by that is like learning management systems. And basically what that is a system that a company would use in order to host their learning on. So partnering with companies like that is kind of like another way to get customers onboarded. They take a revenue because they're using their sales team, and we take part of that revenue. So it might be like a 50-50 split on profit, just because it gives me that customer for the first year. And then my goal would be then to obviously get them to renew for year 2 and 3 afterwards. So it might cost me a little bit during year 1, but year 2 and 3 is where the real value is. And ultimately, the reason why I'm doing that is to get more people on board. And then when it comes to either me getting investment for this platform or potentially sale, it'll make the value of the business a lot more higher. And normally, typically with tech, you kind of can sell for around about 5 to 8 times, depending on the kind of tech stack and the kind of complexity and obviously the user base on there. So if I was to go for 5x and I was to get a business to a point of like £250,000, it could be worth over £1 million, the actual product itself, because that's how it works. And if somebody comes to me and goes, "Here's £1 million," will I potentially say yes or no? I don't know at the time. I think for me, I've got a target in mind of where I really want to achieve and get this to, and then hopefully exit at some point. So yeah, I think 30 businesses to onboard by myself this year is achievable. The one thing I'm going to show later on is some customer feedback that I had from a client or potential client of a feature what they would like. So I'm actually building it at the moment. So I'll show you that build and kind of do like a little live demo of that build at the time. That kind of then does go into the 10 new features. And I think one thing with the kind of like podcast generation world at the moment, it's very much, it sounds like somebody's reading scripts. And I think for me, if you listen to real podcasts, is that I want to add more emotion into that. So people can get upset, people can get really happy, and really show that emotion and try to drive that into the platform. So that's kind of a goal of mine, to add emotion into the conversations. And then hopefully get towards investment. There is a grant, and I'm going to do an episode on this probably next week or maybe the week after. So in the UK, there's a company that's currently about to run a grant application. And if you don't know what a grant is, it's basically funding for your business where you don't need to pay it back, which is amazing. But there's kind of things and criteria for it. And the criteria for this is that it needs to be the grant needs to be spent on businesses who are looking to upskill adults, buy their technology or their kind of services. And obviously this is mainly to upskill adults. So instead of like an e-learning platform, you're basically giving them an opportunity to create content for learning. So I think the grant is anywhere between like £30,000 to £60,000, which is an amazing grant. Especially the fact you don't have to give it back and you don't have to owe any equity. So give it any equity away of the business. The company itself, I'll go into a lot more when it comes to me showing you that application, that process, but really interesting kind of concept, which somebody mentioned to me, which hopefully, fingers crossed, I'll be considered. So I'm going to be really pushing towards that, because that money could be used towards building the actual technology even further. But ultimately, for me, it's a lot about marketing. So I actually need to get eyeballs to this product a lot more. And then when you're kind of doing this all yourself, it's expensive. So you're kind of like trying to like put money towards it, but you don't want to use too much of your own money because you've got bills to pay. So yeah, they're the kind of three main goals for AudioFlow this year. Growth over LinkedIn and kind of like a strategy over LinkedIn is something that I'm going to talk about next week. So one thing I'm going to be doing is signing up to it's called Sales Navigator on LinkedIn, which will basically give me details of businesses and the contacts, and I'll kind of do a live session on that next week because I haven't used it yet. So I just want to kind of like look at Sales Navigator, understand it, because the purpose behind it is that you can actually really, with the data in LinkedIn and the amount of connections, yes, you can go and start searching for people, but the purpose of kind of Sales Navigator is that I can actually target and look for businesses that meet my criteria. So I think for me, things like transportation companies, because that's where a podcast could get listened to, smaller businesses that don't have massive barriers to entry. Because normally what happens when you kind of hit the small to medium businesses, you can just get them to purchase the product a lot easier than you can with an enterprise, who then have to go for that security and risk mitigation and so forth. So that's basically what we're going to be doing there. So yeah, that's basically where we're at with AudioFlow at the moment. I have just onboarded a new client who is paying £9,400 for the year of usage of AudioFlow, which is great. and that will help then fund some of the next parts of the project, which is getting the ISO certification and GDPR, so that I can enter the enterprise arena, because I need them kind of audits to happen and that to satisfy companies that the data that they're uploading is going to be safe. So that's kind of the next step in this journey for AudioFlow. So just to kind of talk about an update that I'm currently doing. So one potential client said to me, hey, they currently do podcasts as their business. So their business is that they actually record real human podcasts. They do have a kind of human-led approach where they don't want to really use AI as much as not where it's not really required. Where they really want to have real human conversations over podcasts, which I completely understand, because there's a place for AI generated podcasts versus actual conversations between humans, because experience doesn't happen with AI. Because it has no experience. That's basically, it's just being fed off experiences of others. But one of the kind of things that they've said that they want to do, and this is where they could potentially use AI, is to translate the conversations. Now, you're probably thinking, oh, I could do that in things like 11 Labs or other platforms where you can just translate. But you have to think like a conversation could be over an hour. So what and how would you basically do that at speed if you wanted to just quickly output and then translate it into like 30 different languages? So that's currently what I'm building at the moment, and I've just shared my screen. So let me just show you the actual page. So this is kind of like, I've taken it off the actual live site, so it's kind of like in a sandbox environment. And basically what this is a podcast translator test, and kind of what it'll do is take an MP3. So I've basically just converted a YouTube podcast into an MP3. So I've got an example version of a podcast, which is a Mike Thurston podcast, which I've just taken. It's about an hour and 20 minutes. So what I've built so far is that you can basically go to here and choose which language you want to convert it into. So I'm going to use Spanish, and then you can upload the actual
the commodification of women's bodies has gone.
So that's there. That's been uploaded, and then you basically just go translate to Spanish. There's a couple of problems that are happening at the moment. One, with 11 Labs, it's not allowing me to convert an hour and a half or an hour's worth of content in one go. So what I've basically built is segmentation of doing this task. So one thing that this is going to do first is just transcribe the actual audio file first. So it's basically what I've asked it to do is, one, give me the ability to upload such a large file. Two is then to transcribe. So it's basically taking the actual context of the actual conversation and then taking the text off there. Then what it'll do is translate it into this language which has been selected, which is Spanish. So each step it will kind of like, which you'll see in a second, is it pauses before it gets to the next step, so that we can just check everything's okay. Then the next step after translation is then generating. So you choose your voices of where you want the generation to do. What the AI will do as well is that it will also see how many voices are actually in that podcast, because you can obviously have a podcast with more than two people. So, but the thing with this, because it's kind of got like a narration at the start of the video, so it's kind of got a voiceover just kind of like hyping up and marketing the video before you listen to the actual conversation. It'll hopefully pick that up as well. And then basically what it'll do is that it'll generate it all into like the Spanish segments. But this is where the kind of like back and forth with Loveable happens, is because it's not allowing me to just build that at ease. You think you just put one prompt and it'll work, but there's a lot of back and forth that I've been having over last night with Loveable to get this working. And then what it'll do is that it'll basically build like, say for example, it's an hour's podcast, it'll make it into like 5 chunks, because it'll do like 15 minutes and so forth. at the end, when you're happy with it, it'll basically like I've built it so you can then add all the actual segments together and to build one MP3. So as a client, and kind of the usability of that would be to basically just have one MP3 that can just basically say, here's my Spanish version of that podcast. So this is basically what's happened here. So it's transcribed that, so that you can see everything is currently in English. It's got 3 detected speakers in this audio. Like I said before, one is going to be one of the narrations, which I believe is this speaker 1 maybe. This is a question I want to ask you. What is the definition of it? Okay, so speaker 3 seems like the male, so that's Mike. Obviously, it makes a lot more sense when you've actually watched the actual podcast or listened to the actual podcast itself, just because you'll know who like speaker 1, 2, and 3 is. So you can see that speaker 1 seems like that's the girl, who is a influencer who the speaker is. Speaker 3, and then so speaker 2 is basically a narration. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just basically I want that to be Spanish, which is already selected as, translate all this into Spanish now. So first task is taking all the context off the actual MP3. So you can check all that over. Second is then to convert all that into Spanish, which then takes this bit of time again. And this whole process is basically, it's not a quick process, because you have to think it's taking 1 hour's worth of context. And if you do something like a diary of a CEO, which is like normally a 2-hour, 2.5 hour podcast, that will take quite a long time to do. I don't think for the purpose of this yet, I'm going to go down like the route of 2 hour, 3 hours, because I want to build like a 1 hour possibilities first, and then obviously I can build on top of it afterwards. But the feedback from that customer was, if we can get this, then hopefully we can then turn you into a customer. So the reason why I'm kind of like literally had that conversation yesterday, and started building straight away, going, okay, actually it's a good feature to have on the system. Now, not every system that a customer will suggest is something that you should just take just because you want that customer. You need to make sure it makes sense to your overall product, and this does, because it's basically still a podcast, and it's still audio, and it still has all the elements in AudioFlow already created previously. So, and all the APIs are already connected. So it just makes sense for me to be able to add a feature on where I already have something pre-existing. And it probably would be something that quite a few potential customers might take into account as a good to have feature, because quite a few people are building podcasts internally with like CEOs and stuff like that, but they're not translating it. So if there's a tool out there that can simply just do what we're doing, that would be amazing. The challenge for me is how we can keep the emotion consistent, because AI generated podcasts are a bit linear. They don't really have like highs and lows throughout the conversation and that emotion. 11 Labs has come out with a new feature where it kind of like adds emotion, but you have to kind of script that in, which is something that I want to do later on, is basically script in the actual emotion into it. But I'll see if it can kind of detect the emotion within the actual conversation, and then basically be able to pull that out. This is going to take a little bit of time, because obviously it's translating now, but I will pause the video just to kind of wait, and I'll come back to it when we've kind of got to the next steps, and I'll see if it basically, see, it's failed now. So this is the thing with Loveable, is that I think when you give it too much, because this is translating like an hour's worth of context, it's probably like, yo, that's just too much in one go. I can't do that whole translation for like an hour and a half worth of translation. So that's something that I'm going to have to tell it now. So I'll just do it now, actually. Translation, it failed midway after about 5 minutes, I'd probably say 5 minutes. I always ask it a question as well, like, is it able to translate the amount of text in one go as it Yeah, I think when you start asking questions as well, it'll kind of like think to itself and go, actually, is this something that it can do? And this is where you go back and forth. Like you think, oh, this should be an easy task to do when building, but when you actually start testing and trying to actually go, oh, at doing a translation, what happens when it's like an hour long? Yes, it can do 10 minutes, but what about the extension? Can it run for that long of period of time? To be able to do all that, then it does become a lot more tricky. Like you have to think, like if I just go through here, there's all this conversation that is kind of trying to basically translate it in one bulk. I personally think what's happening now is look, the log shows that the function timed out after 5 minutes, got through 4 of the 15 chunks, then shut down. So what it's basically doing is just cutting off. So what needs to happen in the back end is it needs to be able to run for that length of time. And that's why I had to kind of like reduce down the amount of kind of when it came to the actual generation part, to basically segment it into like 4, 5, 6 chunks, because it's kind of taking all that and converting it all into like an hour plus is quite a lot of a big task, to be honest. So what I'll do now is I'll definitely pause it and I'll come back in a bit. Okay, so we're back. That's taken quite a while because obviously the amount of translation it had to do. So what the system did is that it actually translated the hour and 15 minute podcast into like 20 chunks. So I think it did it like chunk by chunk, just so it didn't crash when it was translating. So this is the kind of next steps of kind of the translator now. So you've got speaker 1, 2, and 3. So like I said before, speakers 3 and 1 seem to be the actual conversation. So I'm going to go with Sarah, the American one. Speaker 3, he's English in real life, so I'll go with George. These are all going to be converted into Spanish. It's not going to sound like it's there, but this is just kind of like how 11 Labs presents it, because it's people who speak that language. So let's go with... So you got Sarah, Eric, and George. So that's all been done. Now it's going to be quite a long podcast. You can see here 7 segments and 103 minutes in total. So they'll generate 7 segments into 12 to 15 minutes each, and then you can combine them into one file at the end. So that's basically what the next step's going to be. So this is going to take some time, and then what I'll do, I will come back when hopefully this actually completes, because last time I did this, it didn't pick up all 3 voices. So we had to kind of go back and keep prompting it. It only picked up voice 1, so it gave me like a 15-minute kind of audio file, but it was giving me like voice 1 speaking all 3 voices. So it'll be interesting to see now if this hopefully works, and then if it actually generates me all 7 segments. But honestly, because this is like an hour and 3 minutes long, or 103 minutes long, I don't know how long this is going to take. So I'll come back to you as soon as I know. And straight away, this failed, which was really annoying. So something's failed in this first segment, and I have a feeling that part 2 is going to stop again if part 1 did as well. Okay, so good news. It's basically done what I've asked it to do. So it's converted all 7 segments into Spanish. The only thing is, I actually don't speak Spanish, so I actually don't know if this is right or wrong. And another thing that's kind of a bit not concerning, but just kind of something that I've just noticed is like the actual English version of the podcast is an hour and 25, but this version is an hour and 15. Now, I don't know if that's just because of the way that the Spanish language might speak, so things might be a little bit slow. There's a little bit more pauses, r-ing. But what I'm going to do is, my nephew is Turkish speaking as well as English. So I'm going to test it with him over Turkish just to see if the English version and the Turkish translation version then actually is aligned, because I don't want it to obviously just be a completely different conversation or have different contexts. Yes, it basically what the system's done is taken the transcript, taken that transcript, rewrote it into Spanish, and then translated it all with the voiceovers over. And listening to it, I don't know if you can hear it when I play it, but I'll quickly just play a sample.
Uplift you. Por favor, den la bienvenida a Liana Deeb.
Siempre me ha encantado poder escuchar o leer comentarios sobre mi cuerpo. Nunca lo hice solo por validación. Hubo tantas veces que quise usar pantalones cortos y un sujetador deportivo solo porque me sentía segura con eso. Me conecté con mi fe.
So it has obviously changed it into Spanish, and it's taken the voices of Mike, made that into a male speaking Spanish speaker, taken the voice of the influencer, made that into a female Spanish speaker. So if any of you guys speak Spanish and want to test this out for me and make sure it actually aligns, drop me a message. That'd be amazing. But yeah, if this can kind of get me another client, which is probably going to be like a, I don't know, £10,000 client, if they go with that package, I think they probably will need to go for a bit of a higher package, to be honest, because it's going to take a lot of credits away every single time you convert a existing podcast into a different language, and depending on how many languages that you might want to convert. So you might need to build like a bespoke package for this customer, unless they segment their kind of like journey over like month by month and basically do like one podcast and then translate it into 30 different languages and so forth. But yeah, I'll keep you posted on how this works and take it from there.